Hi, welcome to Write More Light. My name is Sarah. I'm with the Midwest Writing Center, and this is Write More Light. For those who are tuning in for the first time, the format of this show, if you see me sitting here alone, is I'm going to give a little talk, then we're going to do updates on the Midwest Writing Center, and end with a free write. So let's get into it. Today we're talking about recognizing and repairing appropriation in our own art. This is a heady topic. And it's something that I've seen come up again and again and again and again. People get really excited about a project that they're working on and learn that they might be problematic. They might be doing something problematic, and it gets really, really tough. So we're going to talk about it. So very, very, very often in large workshops, I use the words workshop and class interchangeably sometimes. In this moment, I mean class. We'll see someone who's advised that a project they're working on or a project that they want to work on is not their story to tell, and that it is culturally appropriative or insensitive. This is especially common, I think, when we see something from another culture that we think is beautiful and that inspires us or speaks to us in some intimate way. I think it is really, really, really rare and maybe never ever happens with malicious intent. I think that it is always when someone feels a connection with another culture. But it's also really, really common or normal even to bristle. I think it is normal to bristle when you're being called out for being appropriative, especially if you feel called out, right? You feel like the spotlight's on you and it's in a bad way. And when we have good intentions and we are told that we are harming or might be harming someone, it really sucks. I want to emphasize how much that sucks. It hurts. It hurts when we're told that we are hurting someone. And it's definitely scary too in a room full of people. It's a weirdly high pressure situation in which we're meant to process information that sounds a whole lot like being accused of bigotry, and we're supposed to also react compassionately and not act like our feelings are hurt. And that's really hard, especially in that moment, especially under pressure. But that's the hardest part. The hardest part is controlling our reaction and not getting defensive. Here's the thing. The person who's calling us out might be right and they might not be. So definitely in the moment, the right thing to do is to thank that person and not elaborate and not defend yourself. I think it only makes sense. I'm not saying that I'm above this to defend yourself, but it's very important not to defend yourself in that moment. For a couple of reasons. It will it tells your brain to dig its heels in, which will make it harder for you to examine later to see, in a more holistic view, how problematic maybe you are being. And it makes it makes the other people around you ready and expect an argument, and you don't want that, especially if you are trying to really do right by whoever it is you may or may not be appropriating from. Now, here are two reasons to say thank you and not sorry. If you apologize, the other person feels compelled to comfort you. Potentially, the person who called you out is the person who feels harmed, and it is not their job to forgive you if you have not atoned, or at all. But and you might not be sorry, and an apology is weakened if we elaborate. Like if I say I'm sorry, but here's my defense against this case that I'm feeling right now in this moment when I'm feeling really activated. Once we say sorry, especially in the heat of that moment, we often end up becoming defensive. The most important thing to do is not get defensive. It makes it, I already said this, but it makes it a lot harder to self-examine later. And that's super, super important. Once we start defending ourselves, we start to dig ourselves into the belief that we're defending, and we might not be right. That's why we're talking right now. That's why we're talking about how to recognize when we're being appropriative and how to repair any potential damage done. That's why I'm making this video. Another reason not to get defensive is it makes everyone tense, and it is then much harder to have an open and honest conversation. Another reason is everyone probably knows that you have good intentions. So you do not need to explain yourself. You don't need to explain that you have good intentions. People likely wouldn't feel safe bringing your attention to appropriation if they didn't think you had good intentions, because there would be no reason to. You wouldn't be responsive or receptive to that information. Explaining your good intentions actually kind of just makes you look like you need to be right instead of good. And another reason not to get defensive or to say thank you instead of sorry, I don't know. I'm all over the place. When you thank someone, you look good and they feel better. Now, here are some steps for determining if you've told it. I want to pause here. This is a lot, especially if somebody is like coming off of this situation. So take breaks from this video if you need to. It's not going to be a long video. It'll be here when you come back. This is a lot, and it's not meant to be easy to reckon with this stuff, because this is really difficult stuff for everyone involved, for the people who are maybe victims of appropriation, and also for the people who love a culture that they are learning that they are harming. Of course, that's difficult. Now, here are some steps for determining if you have told a story that doesn't belong to you or appropriated from another culture. The characters are from a marginalized culture that you do not belong to. I made a note for myself that says, don't list kinds of people. That's a rule of thumb that I think everybody needs to remember, is when we list kinds of people, we leave people out. And also, like, what is a kind of person? So when I say a marginalized group, a marginalized culture, that means someone who's not from the dominant culture. So a dominant culture includes and this is just as bad. I'm going to try to describe somebody who's like doing well. So someone in the dominant culture would be cishet, white, able-bodied, more likely a man, right? The people who run our world. So if you are writing from the perspective of a marginalized culture in which you are not included, it's pretty likely it's not your story to tell. This list is endless, and I know I have already said, like, we're not going to list kinds of people, but if you haven't experienced the thing in the specific way that you're describing, there's a lot of chance that you're harming the people who have experienced that. And that is not the same as paying homage to a culture, or like telling your friend's story who has asked you to or something. But if you've just taken it upon yourself to tell the story of, a queer Swana refugee, like, then you're neither of those things, or only one of those things, like, there's a huge rift between you and your ability to tell that story. And we talk a lot about how a lot of writing is an exercise in empathy, and we're trying to experience another person's reality. That is not the same as giving those people the space to tell their own stories. And that is a huge problem that we have in Western culture and in publishing right now, is we're more likely to hear the stories of marginalized people told from someone in dominant culture. Yeah. So the list of ways one can be marginalized go on and on. you know, includes unhoused people and poverty, in addition to like what we see so often, which is, you know, people of color or queer people. Um, really any I don't often use the word minority. I don't think it's a great word, but anyone who is not of a majority, right? It's probably of a minority. So just be careful to look in a mirror when you're telling this perspective. The important thing is it's a group you do not belong to. You probably belong to plenty of marginalized identities if you look inside yourself. Um, it's entirely different for a marginalized person to write from the perspective of someone from a dominant culture. So that's important to keep in mind, and not try to like play a fairness game with that. It's when a marginalized person writes from the perspective of someone from a dominant culture. There's plenty of information about the dominant culture available to everyone because it is considered the default. When someone who does not understand a culture, and we cannot understand a culture that we are not part of, when someone who does not understand a culture tries to represent a culture, um, it will pretty much always cause harm from accidental bigotry, microaggressions, taking the space. This is an important one. I already mentioned it, taking the space a marginalized person could have held. This gets a lot of people really upset because many people believe that preference is given to people with marginalized identities, like in publishing, for example, and that is statistically inaccurate. That's statistically inaccurate. Just don't don't entertain that thought. It's untrue. You can fact check me. And it's especially inaccurate because in marketing, marginalized groups are given a slotted number of spaces to take up. So if, for example, a white person is telling a Black story, that white person is taking up the Black person's space because we only have 5 spaces for Black stories on our publishing this year. So a person from the dominant culture is telling so when a person from the dominant culture is telling the story of a marginalized person, they are taking up the few allotted spaces that culture is allowed. Marginalized people are also allowed to tell stories from the dominant culture because they have fewer opportunities to tell their own stories, especially safely. And then we're going to go back to determining if you have told a story that doesn't belong to you. Are you using a language that is not a dialect that you use, or that people of your background use? This is really, really dicey because it leads to people using stereotypes and again, microaggressions. So there's a question to ask yourself. Are you using stereotypes, and how do you know that you're not using stereotypes? Do you have contact with many people from this background? This is important, do they talk about their experiences specific to microaggressions and their identity with you? If not, they may not feel comfortable sharing these things with you, which means that you are less likely to have accurate information. That I think is a difficult one for folks to really internalize because it's hard to learn that we're maybe not a safe space, and it might just be like you don't know somebody very well rather than like they feel unsafe with you. But if you don't have a lot of people who you are very close with who are specifically sharing information about prejudice they face with you, you probably don't have accurate information. If you are using mythology from a culture you do not belong to, that is not part of the Western canon, that's something to examine. I specify that is not part of the Western canon because I'm not Greek, and Greek mythology is just everywhere in the Western world. Right. So is Norse mythology. But I don't know anything about, Ethiopian mythology, and so I shouldn't be. It's not part of the Western culture, and so if I were speaking to it or using it for metaphor or whatever, it would be wrong. It would not be my place. And it's not my people, it is not my stories. Watch the language that you describe people's physicality with. Are your adjectives complimentary, derogatory? Either one can be problematic. I know that that is tough and confusing because why would a compliment be a problem? It often a compliment is often just like a a moment away from fetishization, and that's something to be really, really careful about because that also is unsafe for the people who are being fetishized. And of course, we are demonizing people if we're using derogatory language to describe them. Same question, watch the language you describe people with, including voices, cadence, and personality features. There are, and our brains do this for us because we like things to fit in boxes. But this is our descriptions of people are what carry us into stereotypes, and we often don't realize it. Here are some other, and I don't want this to seem like I'm covering everything that I could cover. This is really, I should have said this at the top of the video. This is some cliff notes on how to work on it yourself within your own writing, and to work on toning. So here's some other notes to look into, some really important things to consider. Why? This is, again, this is going to be heavy. Why do you think this is your story to tell? And, sit with these questions if this is something that you're dealing with. Why do you think there isn't someone better than you to tell this story? Does the story have to center someone from this group? I think that question is hard for people because they think, I don't want to keep telling the cishet white story. I don't want to keep centering cishet white people, whatever it is, because other people deserve to be centered. And then, we think that we're doing the right thing by centering someone else. But in action, we might be othering them, and that's super dangerous. And again, there's room for everyone, and we need to allow them to tell the people who are different from us to tell their own stories. So if the story doesn't have to center someone whose experience you cannot speak to, then that's an easy change. But really, really the most important stuff to consider is, why do you think this is your story to tell? And why do you think there isn't someone better than you to tell the story? And I don't want it to seem like I'm not sympathetic or empathetic. It happens to be that this is a relatively straightforward situation once we can remove our emotions from it. And I want to say I've been guilty of this myself. I wrote, it was not a long piece, it was a picture book. Fully completed it though. And then I realized I was depicting something that wasn't mine to talk about. I still don't know a lot about the topic. I thought that I wrote a really sweet story. That's not enough. Especially since I am ignorant about the topic. It could very well be a really, really important to someone, and I just used it because I thought it was nice. I haven't yet tried to rewrite it. Maybe I can, and maybe I can't. Just rewrite it a little bit, reshape it. That's a decision I may make someday, or I can keep it shelved. But I'm really, 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 really grateful that I figured that out on my own, because I have been witness to, and probably because I was witness to, someone being approached with this, right? Because I saw people be asked, why is that your story to tell? Or why aren't you leaving that story for someone who experienced it to tell it? Like, because I saw people get called out about this, I was able to see that I had made the same mistake myself. And I'm really, really grateful that I could figure that out on my own. So I'm hoping that this video can help you with that too. Because I wouldn't want people to think that I was insensitive, but I was. I was insensitive. I think that it's really lovely when we want to tell whatever story comes to us, and I think that we should. That doesn't mean that that story needs to go out in the world and be consumed where it can cause harm. I'm pleased I finished a project. That doesn't happen every day. I'm sharing this about myself to show that we can hold ourselves accountable and to show that I know how hard it is to scrap an idea that you care about, especially a full project. It sucks. But your ideas are going to continue to flow and your work will continue to have meaning. It is so, so, so much better that your work doesn't hurt people and that it is authentic and fair. Work that comes from a context that we fully understand is richer work. Yeah. So I'd love if there's something I should have touched on more or something that I said that was unclear, please let me know. I would love to elaborate, continue to help people. I think that we all make art because we believe it's worth making. And we want good things in the world. We want to create. So I think that this conversation preceded me and will outlast me, but maybe it won't. Maybe we'll fix it. So I'm happy to continue and to answer any questions anyone might have. And that concludes the talking part of this video. For folks looking to catch up with the Midwest Writing Center, I'm going to give updates now. We have just started in September a workshop group for teens. That's 15 to 19 / high school. And now this is about to get a little complicated. It is on the second and third Tuesday of the month. The second Tuesday of the month is online. The third Tuesday of the month is at Midwest Writing Center's offices. It's the ground floor of the Rock Island Public Library downtown branch, right on 4th Avenue and 19th Street. Both are from 5:30 to 8 p.m. Central Time. But if you are or you know a teen outside of Central Time who wants to participate, they can come to the online group. I run the online group. Both groups have pretty much the same format, though. We'll open up with some writing exercises, get sort of our writing selves active and writing brains flowing, and then we'll move into workshopping. Both places will discuss workshop rules so that everybody's on the same page. Everybody's coming in the spirit of helpfulness and receiving feedback in the spirit of helpfulness. We always have our group for all ages is the first and third Saturday of the month, and that's just a workshop group. It's called Writers Studio. It's 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Central Time. There's an online group and an in-person group, but those ones are on the same day at the same time. Okay. What? So I'm gonna flip through 85 pages because it's the end of the month, my planner. We've got some really great stuff coming up on Writer's Studio in October, but you'll see that when I release that graphic. Lowland Block Party at Labor Space. That's that grassy area between Talks and Ragged Records is October 6th from, it's either noon to 5 or 1 to 4. I apologize for not knowing that for sure. We're going to be there all day. We've got readers on the hour every hour. That would be what, 3rd Avenue? That's on 3rd Avenue and I think 21st Street in Rock Island. There's going to be live music all day. There's going to be tons and tons of vendors. There's going to be food. It's, I think this is like the 6th time that we've been involved. That doesn't sound right. What is time anyway? It's an awesome event. There's a lot of like artisans, and then there's also, like nonprofits and performances. It's an amazing time. Highly recommend. Then on October 9th, my most anticipated reading of the season, the Spectre reading series, that'll be at Talks. It's almost always at Talks. 7 p.m. is doors, 8 p.m. the readings start. We're highlighting Elliot Sky Case. That's our featured reader, who is an MWC Press author, and oh my God, one of my favorite poets. I'm very, very, very excited, and even more exciting, every single one of the readers that night is gender nonconforming. So we're gonna have an event that probably just you're not often going to see a lineup like that. It's gonna be really wonderful. It includes Chewy Renteria, Kai Newell, and Lynn Kress. It's gonna be really, really, really great. I'm really excited. Then we have on October 12th, that's a Saturday, 10 to noon online. So it's Central Time, but 10 to noon, open to anybody. Does cost, I want to say $40 for members. A workshop on writing in a changing place with Tamara Dean. That is for all genres, all levels of writing. And it talks about how place comes into play and how place can be so emotionally charged. And by virtue of existing in a temporal world, places change. So that's going to be a really, really cool workshop. I'm really excited for that. And we don't do a lot on Saturdays, so bonus. We have another Spectra reading series coming up on, oh goodness, it's later in October. I think maybe the 24th. I'm correct, the 24th. We also will be at Iowa City Book Fest, October 19th and 20th. Oh my goodness, so much is happening. As I'm just gonna close my planner. As I've been saying for a little while, as I'll continue to say for quite a while, we have submissions open for our Foster Stall chapbook series. So that's a chapbook. We're open to any genre for that, and the submission fee is just purchase of one of our chapbooks. There you go. We're also taking submissions for a new collaboration with the Galvin Fine Arts Center at St. Ambrose University. And that, so last year we did this for the first time, and that created our Radical Hospitality book. And this year the theme is being human in the age of AI. So we're looking for super, super short pieces. I want to say it's a max of 500 words or 30 lines. 500 words is prose, 30 lines is poetry. That interrogates that concept, being human in the age of AI. For today's writing prompt, I would like you to write into. So I thought this was cute and cheeky when I came up with it, because we're talking about not writing from the point of view of someone else. And then I wanted to bring in the prompt, being human in the age of AI. So what would your digital doppelganger have to say? Write however it comes. Doesn't matter if it's poetry or prose or a journal. Just set yourself 5-10 minutes on a timer and write more light into your life.